deplore the situation that freedom-loving Iranians are suffering under in this terrible resettlement program from Camp Ashraf to Camp Liberty. What a shame to use the word liberty in what is essentially a prison. It's the anti-liberty. They should be called Camp Anti-Liberty, and yet they find themselves shunned, pushed aside, sadly, by our own government and by the Iraqi government, a government that we have helped so much, that we have shed blood and treasure in that country, and now we've seen an unholy alliance between Iraq and Iran, and in the middle, inconveniently for the Iraqi government and for the Iranian regime, are these freedom seekers in Camp Liberty. The residents of Camp Ashraf, the residents now, many of them at Camp Liberty, they have said, let us work on this camp. We can fix it up. So they're not asking for money. They're not asking for supplies. They're not asking for anything other than being given the chance to improve their living conditions so that they can have shelter that is livable. Many of them are not getting the medical attention that they need. So when you talk about the basics that you need, and that's good water, good sanitation facilities, make sure that the disabled are cared for, medical attention, none of those amenities are they being afforded. And that's why we are demanding that our State Department take action in a very humanitarian way to let the residents of Camp Liberty refurbish their own facilities and make sure that we do not continue with this forced relocation of the Camp Ashraf residents.
Going along with something that's obviously below the surface of why they had to go to Camp Liberty in the first place. And to compare Camp Ashraf, of course, here, which is a camp and which is a community, and you compare that with, I will have to say this, take a look right here. Doesn't that look like Auschwitz?
The conditions are awful. I mean, I have been to Guantanamo Bay Prison. I used to be a judge in Texas. I've been to prisons all over the world. Let me tell you, the conditions in Camp Liberty that we allow to exist are worse than any prison I have ever seen. It is, as Rudy Giuliani has said, nothing more than a modern-day concentration camp where the lives of people are controlled and not treated fairly. Can't get water. Can't sell even their property before they leave the country, so somebody's going to steal it. You can't take care of your folks that are disabled. Basic human necessities are ignored. Now, why is that? Well, in my opinion, it's because of the Maliki government. So the Maliki government has decided to put somebody in charge of Camp Liberty. I haven't met this guy, but his name is Colonel Kazem. You may have heard him. I'm going to call him Colonel Fox, because he's the fox guarding the hen house. And so Colonel Fox's background is interesting, because he was the colonel that ordered the massacre of 36 Camp Ashraf residents last April. Now, isn't that lovely? Putting the fox, Colonel Fox, in charge of the innocents in Camp Ashraf. And he is the one that is preventing basic necessities from coming in to Camp Ashraf, and Camp Liberty, I should say. Why would they put Colonel Fox in charge? Makes no sense to me unless they want to continue, the government wants to continue its persecution.
Let individuals see these photographs and find a way to tell the story over and over again. And what you're doing here, you're putting a human face on what is happening. You will have my help and my continued support. that you must never, ever give in. We cannot segregate the question of human rights.
It has become increasingly evident that the road traveled there from Ashraf led to a very different destination. The purpose of this episode has been undermined by the Iraqi government and is enabled by those who have remained silent. The apparent violation of international humanitarian law is evident, I think, where those confined to Camp Liberty have been denied basic necessities of life, such as clean, safe drinking water. Is there anything more elementary than that? Is there anything about which there can be little, if any, debate? Is there anything that the average person, not knowing the intricacies of international law or refugee status law, is there anything really difficult to understand about giving people something as essential as clean drinking water?
In a region where the average temperature is 111 degrees, access to clean and reliable water is a matter of life and death. And even though Liberty residents have offered to pay to install a water pump nearby, the Iraqi government is holding out. That's not right. It doesn't make sense. Why not allow residents to drink clean water at no cost to the government? Well, this is outrageous, and we must ensure that conditions at Camp Liberty are improved.
So again, the first step, and what we must continue to do, is speak out and demand that this administration stop collaborating with the atrocities that are taking place there. Stop trying to appease the mullahs who have, for now, over a generation, have been murdering Iranians.
And I think it is important, if this message goes to Iraq, may be very clear that we are bipartisan and we are strong. We are committed and we are not divided on the issues of Camp Ashraf and the seeking of liberty, not Camp Liberty the way it is, but liberty and justice and humanitarianism and fairness and what is right for the people in that camp. We will not rest until that happens.
I believe that the living conditions at Liberty, at Camp Liberty, are atrocious. I think that's almost a deliberate effort to try to make this process fail. And the people at Camp Ashraf are resisting the coercion of the mullahs in many cases to try to force them into doing certain things that are certainly not in their best interest. And the one question that I ask is, where is the American State Department? Where are they in dealing with this issue?
First and foremost, we need to let at least our partners down Pennsylvania Avenue in the executive branch in President Obama's administration know what is the will of Congress, what is the message from Congress, and that is that the United States must ensure that Iraq keep its commitments to the residents of Camp Ashraf and Camp Liberty and make sure their dignity, their human rights, and their civil liberties are preserved.
We expect the government of the United States to take its rightful role and moral leadership in support of the freedom fighters of Iran, in support of the refugees at Camp Liberty and Camp Ashraf, and to do everything within the power of the United States to assure that those forces are well provisioned and have the moral support that can be led by the United States government. This government is falling short of that responsibility. We must all insist that it do better.
Our own State Department's thinking on this is muddled and unclear, and mincing and weak, and we'd like to correct that. And we'd like to correct it before what I hope will be a big correction in November.